Finally returning his home country, this ex-soldier wants to become a teacher and help the kids. But when he's set in charge of the worst class in the school, he has to think of more creative ways to reach these kids, and maybe reconnect with himself in the meantime. This is the story of Big Brother. After serving in the US military for many years, Henry is finally going back to Hong Kong. Now it's time to start again and find a new career. He tries to get into teaching, and he goes to Tak Kai Secondary School. Of course, the principal does notice that he doesn't really have experience as a teacher. But luckily for Henry, he has a pretty good recommendation letter from his higher official, and he gets the job. However, the principal notes that since Henry does have experience in the military, he should have no problem since the class he's assigned to is the worst in the school. The first day of school arrives for Henry. He walks into his classroom and sees that it's a mess. Everyone's doing whatever they want, even cooking in the classroom. They don't mind Henry as he walks in, even though he tries to get their attention. It's no use trying to get their attention, so he just wanders the classroom and comments on whatever these students are doing. After actually giving some good advice on the things each group is busy with, the student finally bats an eye at Professor Henry. But then they start making fun of his ugly handwriting, and one of the students says he should just leave the classroom. This is all the attention they were to give Henry, as they immediately went back to doing all the stuff they were doing before Henry got into class. Henry has a MacGyver-like idea and uses a rubber band and a piece of chalk to activate the fire detectors in the classroom, and they begin sprinkling water. The students quickly get up and go to the sides of the classroom to try and not get wet. This finally gets them to pay attention to Henry. He officially welcomes them to the class now. After the class is done, a group of 5 of the worst students sneak into the sports supply room to smoke. Their leader Jack reveals that he has a crush on a top student from another class, and of course, the others make fun of him. These kids have a rivalry with the rich kids on the sports team, and they come into the supply room and bully Jack for being poor. Later on, at the basketball practice, Jack and his group are watching, and Jack drops a bottle, causing the team captain to get distracted and fall. Jack's crew burst into laughter, but they are sent to detention by Miss Lang, the English teacher. They prank Miss Lang to avoid detention and run away while she's distracted though. At the same time, after a meeting, the education board has decided to cut 20% of the funding for the school, and this has the principal super worried. The board arrives at school to check the current state of the school and how they allocate the funds they are already receiving. Right at this time, Henry is arriving at his classroom, where the students have a bucket full of water traps set at the top of the door meant to fall down on him when he gets in the classroom. But Henry has really good reflexes and pushes the bucket away. This leaves his students in awe. In the classroom, Henry asks Jack to hand him the pack of cigarettes he's hiding. Jack goes ahead and gives him the empty box. Henry doesn't scold them or anything, he just asks Zufa to name the ingredients in a cigarette. Zufa surprisingly answers correctly, and Henry gives him permission to skip the rest of the day. The entire class is jealous, and wants to skip class too. Henry hands a cigarette to every student and asks them to inspect them. This way they'll learn what they are made of and why it is really damaging for their health to smoke them. The students listen and are actually interested in learning. Of course, Henry has to ask them to return the cigarettes, even though they don't want to. In the cafeteria later that day, the basketball team captain makes one of Jack's friends trip and fall. The two groups get into a heated argument and then a fight, throwing food from the tables and more stuff, making a complete mess. Henry is later informed that 5 of his students were suspended for the fight. Henry goes to find that Jack is again fighting within the hallway and gets them to stop. Jack says the school is unfair, for only the poor kids get punished and the rich ones go on without a hitch. What Jack said resonated through Henry, and he decided to check on the files of the 5 students suspended. One of them is Zufa. He's the son of a Pakistani immigrant and he's constantly discriminated against for his race. He just wants to become a musician. Another student is named Deenan. She's had problems since her birth. Her father wanted a son and she has always been a disappointment to him. She's tried to behave like a boy to earn her father's respect, but he only cares for her younger brother. There's also Bruce and Chris, 2 brothers whose mother abandoned them when they were kids, and their father turned into an alcoholic. Bruce is now pretty much addicted to video games to escape reality, and Chris works hard at a grocery store to provide money for the family. However, there's no information about Jack there, not even about his family. We see that Jack works at a restaurant. He's just a waiter when an MMA professional bettor called Jan Ying gets there with his business partner. Jack steals Jan Ying's lighter as it seems pretty expensive, but they catch Jack. Jan Ying's people beat Jack up, but when they find out he's just a student, Jan Ying gives him some money and offers him a job as their personal food delivery man. Meanwhile, Henry goes to visit Zufa, but finds him running away from his father and associates after stealing a ticket from them. Henry helps him out at first until he learns why he's running and takes the father's side. Henry goes to hang out with Zufa to try and motivate him into doing whatever he wants. Henry even goes as far as to start singing with a street band to encourage Zufa, who later on starts singing with them too. It's the first time Zufa sings in front of an audience. We see that Bruce and Chris's father arrives home late and drunk, and orders his sons to go out and get him a beer. They refuse, so he yells at them and gets violent, asking them to leave the house. The next day Henry goes to their house to meet their dad, and talks some sense into the man, making him agree to get into rehab for both his and his son's well-being. Wow. Let me take a moment to take a breath, there's so much going on at the same time. Okay, let's get back into the movie. Denon's father gets her a bag full of makeup, but she gets really mad. He always wanted her to be a boy, and now this? For real, man. She uses the makeup on her younger brother, gets the car keys, and tries to escape in her father's car. Henry stops her right there and mentions that she'd get in big trouble for driving without a license. He suggests an alternative and takes her to the go-kart track. But Henry also invites the father and makes them race against each other. This gets to be an intense race in which none of them gives Mercy a room. In a split second they end up outside the racing track and end up in the streets, but Denon's car is almost hit by a vehicle. She somehow manages to dodge it, but her father really thought she died there. He was crying and mourning when Denon surprises him and gives her a huge hug. He really does love her just as she is. Finally, the next day we're back at school. Bruce and Chris are sent with a group to interview a recovering alcoholic at a rehabilitation center. But well, surprise, surprise, the recovering addict they have to interview is their father. They have to ask why he started to drink. The man opens up about how he was devastated when his wife left him when he was at his lowest. He started to drink to escape reality, and basically forgot he had 2 kids to take care of, the brothers cried. Okay, bear with me for a while more, things still move intensely. Now we go to see Jack, who's already working for Jan Ying. He offers him money to drug the other fighter before the next fight. Jack has to accept it, and on the day of the fight Jan Ying bets on the loss of a fighter, the one Jack's supposed to drug. Jack is caught while doing so, and they beat him up before he manages to expose Jan Ying. They leave him locked inside a locker. A while later, Henry arrives and asks if they've seen his student around. They try to get him to leave, but Jack screams from inside the locker, alert Henry, who beats up the men that were blocking him. Of course, it gets a bit complicated when the fighters get into the fight, but Henry is fired up. He goes like Rocky and beats the fighter that was supposed to step into the ring in a few minutes. Now we are in the hospital. After the adrenaline drops a little, he needs to have his wounds treated. Jack tries to reveal the truth about Jan Ying, but they shut him up. Henry gets popular as the news breaks about how he defeated the top fighter to protect his student. The word travels fast, and he's now popular and more respected among the students. He's treated well and welcomed. We get to know that Henry himself was a prankster back at school, and one day he broke another student's hand. He was suspended for the fight, and later on, had to fly to the US. The students now pay close attention to Henry's class, and they seem to be learning. They are getting ready for the college entrance test. Everyone seems to be improving except for poor Bruce. He's become addicted to pills. All the pressure from maintaining the family was catching up to him, and while Chris turned to video games to escape reality, Bruce got into drugs. He's been doing badly lately, so he gets a terrible score on the mock test. Bruce can't seem to focus, and Henry tries to comfort him, but even with this, Bruce gets more and more depressed. One day he jumps out of the balcony of his house. Even though he's rushed to a hospital, he's in a coma, and they don't know if he's gonna make it. The media blames the school, and even Henry, for what happened to Bruce. The education board revokes Henry's teaching license, and he's forced to quit. As he's packing his stuff and getting ready to leave, his students are heartbroken, and they chase him as he leaves school. They don't want him to leave, but they tell him that they are all going to get the top scores on the test to make him proud. They study and focus more than ever before. They must prove to the board that they are wrong about Henry. On the day of the test, all his students get a text from Henry asking them to meet in school an hour before the test. As the students gather to wait for Henry, they find out that it was actually a trick from Jan Ying to prevent them from presenting the exam in time. Jan Ying wants to teach Henry a lesson to not get into his business. A while passes and Henry arrives at school and finds out about Jan Ying's plan. He helps them escape from Jan Ying's people by defeating them all and leaving the children unharmed. This allows them all to get to the exam room just in time, leaving Henry to fight Jian Ying. Now grab onto your seat cuz there's still more. As they get into their one-on-one fight, we learn that Jan Ying was the kid whose hand Henry broke when they were younger. He was learning piano as a kid, and since he got his arm broken we were unable to compete in any big music competition. He has not been able to get near a piano, let alone play one. He blames Henry directly for ruining his dreams, and even though Henry tries to break some reason into him, things escape up with the knife in the fight. Henry overpowers the man, and gets a chance to kill him, but doesn't. Instead he asks for forgiveness for his actions when he was a kid, and walks away. At the same time, the students made it to the exam room just in time and got to work on the test. A few weeks later, they all have approved, and with excellent scores by the way. Jan Ying has started to play the piano again. Of course, he's a little rusty, but with some hard work, he's sure to get back to being good. Bruce has recovered and makes a promise to go double as hard on his studies and get an excellent score next year on the test. The principal is overjoyed as the board didn't cut the funds but instead gave the school a 20% bonus for the excellent scores on the test. Henry goes back to teaching. All over again. He seems to have a problematic class, so he does the chalk trick one more time and there we go again. To watch more videos like this, please subscribe our channel so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching.